let's talk about this letter. 30 members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Do we have a screen grab of this letter? Let's put it up. Sent a letter to President Biden. Guess it was yesterday. I want to make it clear, I've had no coordination with any of these people. I had no idea this letter was coming out, even though this, in many respects, echoes what we've been talking about over the past couple of days. Mm-hmm. We write with appreciation for your commitment to Ukraine's legitimate struggle against Russia's war of aggression. I don't think anyone in the sound of my voice would disagree that Ukraine has a legitimate struggle against Russia and that it is Russia's war of aggression.
Yes.
They go on to say your support for the self-defense of an independent, sovereign, and democratic state has been supported by Congress, et cetera, et cetera. We agree with your goal of avoiding direct military conflict as an overriding national security priority. So in other words, not going to have explicitly U.S. troops fighting Russia. We also believe it's in the interest of Ukraine, the United States, and the world to avoid a prolonged conflict. For this reason, we urge you to pair the military and economic support that the United States has provided to Ukraine with a proactive diplomatic push, redoubling efforts to seek a realistic framework for a ceasefire. This is consistent with your recognition that, quote, there's going to have to be a negotiated settlement here. That's what Joe Biden said. And your concern that Putin doesn't have a way out right now. And I'm trying to figure out what we do about that. They go on to say, we are under no illusions regarding the difficulties involved in engaging Russia, given its outrageous and illegal invasion of Ukraine and its decision to make additional illegal annexations of Ukrainian territory. However, if there is a way to end the war while preserving free and independent Ukraine, it is America's responsibility to pursue every diplomatic avenue to support such a solution that is acceptable to the people of Ukraine. In other words, they acknowledge that the Ukrainians have to sign off on this. Such a framework would presumably include, but not necessarily, I guess, incentives to end hostilities, including some form of sanction relief, and bring together the international community to establish security guarantees for a free and independent Ukraine that are acceptable for all parties, particularly Ukrainians. Russia's invasion has caused incalculable harm for the people of Ukraine, leading to the deaths of countless thousands of civilians, Ukrainian soldiers, and displacement of 13 million people. The conflict threatened, I'm skipping around a little bit, the conflict threatens an additional tens of millions more worldwide as skyrocketing prices in wheat, fertilizer, and fuel spark acute crisis and global hunger and poverty. We agree with the administration's perspective that it is not America's place to pressure Ukraine's government regarding sovereign decisions, and with the principle you've enunciated that there should be nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. But as legislators responsible for the expenditure of tens of billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars in military assistance in the conflict, we believe such involvement in this war also creates a responsibility for the United States to seriously explore all possible avenues, including direct engagement with Russia, to reduce harm and support Ukraine in achieving a peaceful settlement. Now, they do not ask, although they do not ask for an articulation of what the end game is, like is something that, I've done here. But here's Ro Khanna, one of the letter signers, speaking to The Intercept. I have voted for every defense package to Ukraine and stand firmly for Ukraine's sovereignty. It should not be controversial to say we need to explore every diplomatic avenue to seek a just peace and to end the war, including engagement of our allies to help with that. I mean, I don't understand how people can have a problem with this.
Well, they did. Well, I mean, the backlash was immense. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's not controversial when Admiral Mullen says it, but when the left says it, it is. And I think that's pretty concerning. We got this clip of Mullen here. I just put it in the bottom of Sound Pulse there. But this is like basically all I wanted to hear
this
from
was the show's
the Biden
position.
administration.
Yes.
Like it's not, and we'll play what Mullen said on October 10th with Martha Raddatz here.
So how do you see him saving face if he doesn't come to the table, if Ukraine can't figure anything out, and you've heard Zelensky as well? Yeah. How does he possibly save face, especially after what you said about the bridge?
Well, it's very difficult to see it. We've been talking about since before this crisis started an off-ramp for him. I suspect it's in the east, if you will, with those 4 provinces or some combination of them with respect to how it all ends. And that really is up to, I think, Tony Blinken and other diplomats to figure out a way to get both Zelensky and Putin to the table. And as is typical in any war, it's got to end. And usually there are negotiations associated with that. The sooner, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
And we talk about these tactical nuclear weapons. Where would he use those? What kind of damage can they do?
Well, depending on the size of them, he's got some very small ones, which theoretically, while devastating, would localize the damage. The winds all blow back onto Russia, so he would have to, in a way, contaminate his own country. He could pick a symbolic.
Yeah. So, I mean, and look, now, about an hour ago, the Progressive Caucus withdrew the letter because of the blowback on this.
And Jayapal's reasoning for it, she blames her staff, essentially, in this.
Is that right?
I sent this tweet in the chat. I mean, Did
this just come out, too?
The Jeff Stein thing. Oh, this is the full statement? Okay.
The middle paragraph there is the relevant one.
Okay, gotcha. The letter was drafted several months ago, but unfortunately was released by staff without vetting. As chair of the caucus, I accept responsibility for this. Oh my God, Jayapal.
How does that happen?
What? I mean, give me a break here. You had 30 people sign on to this. That is a completely chicken shit thing to say, frankly. And like... nothing that they said in this letter was in any way controversial. They reiterated that Russia's invasion was unjust. They reiterated support for Ukrainian sovereignty. They just essentially said that there should be some sort of push for a diplomatic solution in the context of our relationship with this war. That has been this show's position. I feel it's been mischaracterized by certain people, but the reality is that is our position, and I feel like it's shameful, frankly, for Jayapal to throw her own staff under the bus when all she and those other 30 lawmakers were saying is frankly a common sense position within the context of our relationship with this war. And I will just say here too, when people say that it's Ukraine's decision only to make in these talks, like, yes, this is their sovereign country, but we do have a say in terms of our aid and what conditions we place on it. We don't have a say in what Ukraine can make in terms of their sovereign
This isn't even talking about conditions.
No.
This is just simply saying, we urge you to make an effort to promote diplomacy. That doesn't mean that we're going to be that the United States is in a position to offer any concessions from either side, for that matter. Certainly, there were reports in April that NATO was discouraging any type of diplomacy, and this is not even conditions. Frankly, this is just saying we urge you to pursue diplomacy too. Now, people can argue dumb timing on this. Obviously, it was politically, because that's why they're backing off it all now, because of the amount of blowback. But let me put it this way: if folks don't think that that you can't even have a push for diplomacy while simultaneously funding the war. And it doesn't matter. I know Putin's response was like, I'm not doing this or whatever. It doesn't matter. This is about the behavior of the United States, the parameters we set up for ourselves when we engage in war or in the active funding of a war. It doesn't matter whether we think it is a just war or an unjust war. This is about like having guardrails for the United States so that when it's President DeSantis and he wants to fund Saudi Arabia attacking Iran or Israel attacking Iran based upon whatever it is, that we can rely on some measure of what is an appropriate and an expected sort of like use of our money or our military. That's it. That's it. And it is a complete degradation of our standards in terms of when we support or engage in war. That's all that is. It's nothing else. It doesn't add one iota of helping Ukraine defeat Russia. All it does is it diminishes and degrades the obligations that we have in terms of funding and engaging in war. That's it.
And the letter does not even critique military aid to Ukraine as a concept. Like, that has been made in some circles. I support military aid to Ukraine. All it does is call for a diplomatic solution, and that is the pushback that they receive. So much so that Jayapal has to throw her own staff under the bus and pretend like this is an outdated letter as a way to cool things off. I mean, that chills the environment on actually like substantive policy choices made by that we can critique of our governments in relation to this war. No. Because, cloaking it in some sort of like artificial, I guess, you're for Putin kind of critique, which is so silly and childish, frankly.
Or you're helping Putin. Like, why? I just want to know why people didn't freak out to Mullen saying basically even more, saying those new territories. I don't even remember him saying that when I.
Well, nobody even like nobody on the left cares what Mullen says.
Well, I mean, but like I'm talking about like the Ukraine like left, the folks who are criticizing the squad over this.
Maybe in the final analysis, he has no control over the funding.
Mullen?
Yeah,
but I just mean like they're not. Their problem is like the messaging on this. As far as I can tell, and they just don't care about and I think it's a problem when a military guy can say something and it basically falls on deaf ears, and then the left says something, the left members of Congress say something, and it is a conniption.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, I think this is. It may take 5 years, it may take 10 years, but maybe it takes 2 years, but we're going to end up. This is going to end up being problematic. Bear at home, me too. We can't force Putin to negotiate. Why is this hard to understand? I'm not talking about Putin. I'm talking about the efforts that the United States expends on attempting to for diplomacy. This is just bizarre. And people are saying like it's that if Putin agrees to a ceasefire, it may be as a way of regrouping. This says nothing about a ceasefire. This says pursuing diplomacy and making sure that you create a framework, but that you allow for the Ukrainians essentially to veto anything. It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre that a call for diplomacy alongside the funding of the war is somehow controversial. It's bizarre to me. But
I mean, even if you wanted to like conquer Russia entirely, I feel like a public stance of diplomacy is probably going to help you more there anyway, but whatever.